Hello, Frances. How are you? And welcome to the Art Salon in Bath.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
It's very nice to see you. In this lockdown period, we haven't sort of seen enough of anyone, have we, really? It's been a bit
Yeah,
chaotic, a bit chaotic. But I
yes.
have a selection of your work here. It's like I'm sitting in a beautiful garden right now. Now, you make these works, you are a sculptor, but in clay, in ceramics is what you're known for. Take me back, because you had a life before clay, didn't you? Take me back to the beginning, would you?
Okay, so the beginning um, started, well, actually, when I was a child, I always made things, but I didn't know that you could make things as a career. It was, it wasn't in my milieu, as it were. So I continued on through life doing many other things, looking after children, motorcycle dispatch, had a restaurant, but I did train in patisserie and got very good at modelling.
Mm.
And so in my 30s, I went off to do an evening class in pottery, found that my skills transferred nicely over to pottery. And after a couple of years, I was flying, sold the restaurant, went to university, and did a three-dimensional design degree
Mhm.
for 5 years, and then came out, and there I was, a potter, and then later a sculptor. So that's where I'm from.
Sugar to clay, sugar to
Sugar to clay, yes.
little switch over. Let
Yeah.
me, I mean, it's very obvious what your subject matter is. There's no question in that. Tell me, you've obviously got a great affinity to nature, to the natural world around you, and exploring their forms and their colour. Talk to me about your inspiration. What's your why is are you making what you're making?
Um, I suppose it's not always, sometimes my work does look floral, but it's not the floral nature of plants that really excites me. It's the form, and that can be the seed pod, it can be the whole plant, but more often it's a specific part of the plant, like the middle of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to make everything much larger than you actually see it. So my work is viewed from an insect's point of view, you know, looking into the plant, because plants are all about attraction and bringing insects towards them. And if I enlarge the work that I make, then we can see them how an insect would see them. And to me, the attraction is greater looking at it, you know, with little eyes, as it were, you know, making the thing. So
Well, it does, and it takes the viewer in and sort of forces us to have a closer look and to explore. I mean, yours are often abstracted versions of
yes,
what the actual form might have originally looked like. There's definitely artistic
yes,
interpretation there.
yes, yeah, yes. I'm not trying to do anything botanically correct. It's more to do with the patterns that are formed, and so I will exaggerate the patterns, and I'll use a lot of the Fibonacci sequence, which I think is very obvious in my work. I'll always look for that sort of system of patterns within
Mhm.
it, and then it tells me how to build the work.
And how do you even begin to build work like this? How is the process for you? Do you sketch? Do you make small? Do you sketch with pencil? Do you sketch in clay? I mean, how do we get going? How do you start?
Um, I use the camera to start with, and then I'll blow up the image on the computer screen, and I'll look at what's going on. And then I'll play around with clay and make some little sketches just to see what will work.
Mhm.
Then I'll build a prototype, and sometimes the prototype is the best one of the collection. It's just the starting point of the collection. I never really know. It's very obvious when I've made it whether it's, you know, perfect as it is, or whether I've got to move on with it.
Mhm.
I never tell. For me, two dimensions doesn't work. I can draw things all day long, but until I've made it in 3 dimensions, I don't know whether it will work or not. So it's playing around with the clay and then working on from there, really.
So, I mean, there's an engineering element to it as well, isn't there? The sort of construction of it, and does it balance? Does it hold? Will it hold together?
Yes.
There's all that side of it, which you can only do with clay, presumably.
Yes. So nowadays, with more experience, I more or less know how to make something work. But initially, when you work with clay, you have to work backwards from the kiln. So you imagine putting it into the kiln, and then you backwards from there. Is that going to work? Is that piece is going to be supported enough? You know, how will that work at high temperatures? Will it move? Will it then? A lot of my sculptures are made in more than one piece, and they have to fit together afterwards. So all of that has to be worked out in advance. So there's a lot of mechanical building and working out of structure before I even start.
So you've made your sketch, you've made a prototype, but could you explain to people watching this what, you know, I've got a bit of wet clay. This is the sort of stage I'm at.
Yeah.
You've got a bit of wet clay. You've made it into a form, and you're happy with that form. At this point, do you fire it? Do you glaze it? Do you dry it? I mean, you must dry it out presumably first. Just walk me through those basic steps of getting from the wet clay to getting your finished piece.
Okay. Well, everything starts on the wheel. There's nothing that doesn't start on the wheel, and that's why my forms are all very symmetrical. And actually, nature is very symmetrical. It has a symmetry about it, so it works together. But I also like to work quite fast, and so everything will start on the wheel. I'll have a form, and then I'll build onto the form and manipulate the form. And when the whole thing then has to be wrapped up, usually for about 6 weeks, because moisture has to slowly come out of the work, otherwise everything drops off. And then once it's uncovered, it'll be put into a kiln on a long slow firing for maybe at 50 degrees for maybe 12 hours, because if you leave any moisture in the work, it will turn to steam and the whole thing will explode in the kiln, and that's happened many times.
Right.
If that's all fine, it's biscuit fired, it comes back out, more colour will be added, the glaze will be added, and then it goes back in for a very high temperature firing. So because the work usually goes outside, then the clay must be vitrified, so it has to go up to a very high temperature. And that's usually where any problems will come out. So a glaze firing, when I open the door, is always a very nervous I can't even think about it until I've had a coffee and
sort of
and now I do peep around the corner of the kiln and see. And I'm rarely 100% happy with what comes out of the glaze firing. It's sometimes you get a gift from the kiln, sometimes you get something that's better than you think it's going to be, but more often than not you look at it and you think, oh, that's okay, and then, oh, I could improve that, and on you go to the next piece.
Is that because you're a perfectionist, because you drive yourself hard, or is that just the artistic, I'm never quite happy with what I've done? What?
I think it's that. I don't think I am a perfectionist. I've worked with perfectionists, and actually it's a bit painful sometimes working with perfectionists because they can never let go and move on. So I don't think I'm like that, but I can always do better. You know, sometimes I wish I was more of a perfectionist, but when I have finished a piece, I can often see how it could be better. So I'm always striving for perfection. And the work does move on and does become better, as it should.
Absolutely, yes. And it's definitely, over the years that we've worked together, it's changed and it's developed, and your glazes likewise. So let me take you to glazes next, because glazes are often, after the form, they're the thing that collectors are most interested in often, actually. Talk to me about your glazes. How do you what sort of glaze is it? How do you get there? Because you also use glass in some of your pieces as well, don't you? Talk to me about the
Yeah. So colour is built up on my work. So before it even goes in for a biscuit firing, I will use an underglaze, which has got nothing to do with glazing, even though it's got that word in the title. It's pigments that are used on the leather hard body, which is what clay is while it still has water in it. And it means that I can paint on and shade at that point, a bit like watercolours, and I can put the first layer of colour on. And it's biscuit fired, and when it comes out, I can at that point add more underglaze, and then I can put coloured glazes over the top. So what I'm trying to achieve is a variety of effects on the top of the sculpture, because I don't like a flat, opaque look to anything. So I'm trying to build up layers so that when you look into a piece of work, you're looking through the colours. So in fact, the piece you've got down there behind you, the purple one, got several different, it's got underglazes in lavender and heather and lilac and purple. And then on top of that, it's also got a purple translucent glaze. So it will give a much more lively look to the piece. And then the glass I add as well, just to pick out spots, usually around the edge of something or in the middle of something, and just to give a viscous look to a piece of work.
I mean, definitely your glazes, they are very painterly, but they're much closer to nature because there is all the different layerings, and because there's all the different layerings, it's the same effect as sunlight coming across a flower or a cloud then passing over that sunlight to change it slightly. So it does give them their own kinetic energy, I suppose.
Yes. I'm trying to do something impossible, really. I mean, trying to reproduce the delicacy of nature with clay. I mean, it's impossible, but that's what I'm always striving to do. And sometimes you get an exaggerated form of something in nature, which has got high impact and it works. And so I am always trying to do the impossible, obviously, with my work, but...
You don't want to make it too easy on yourself, Fran.
No, it's not. But I think as well that I do enjoy a methodical approach to the work. I do like repetition, even though I'm a very fast and quite impatient person. I like working with repetition. I find it there's something about repeating a form that makes it very strong. Anthony Gormley is you know, his field of dreams was one tiny form repeated over and over, and that's how it works with my sculpture. I think it's the same component repeated many times in various sizes to give high impact.
Which of course is how the world around us is built, how nature's built, how the human is built. So there's a sort of familiarity and reassurance within that you immediately get on viewing, on your first view. The painterly aspect of the glaze gives it then that further layer of interest and development, really. It's So Anthony Gormley's obviously influenced you. What or who are your inspirations?
My biggest influence is Ron Muick. So he makes sculpture. He either miniaturizes or he makes things huge. And it was seeing his work for the first time when I was at university that made me understand about how we relate to things in the world, to ourselves, to our own size. So we have a feeling for something that's in miniature, different to the feeling we have for something that's large and exaggerated. And I veer from one to the other. Sometimes I make things in miniature, but it's not really my style. I find when things are large, I don't know, a tutor at college said to me once, "You're always going for the bold statement," and I am. That's what. So Ron Muick has always been my biggest inspiration. Like, I just like his relationship to size. He made me understand about, you know, the size of art, how we relate to it.
Mm-hmm. And do you spend much, sorry, Frances, carry on.
I can't think of many other people that influence me. It's always been Ron Muick. Otherwise, it's more to do with people on, I use Pinterest a lot because I follow a lot of botanists in South Africa and Australia and North America who photograph things beautifully and things that I don't have access to. So they influence me a lot because they'll send me images of things beautifully photographed, which shows me different aspects to a plant that you can't see just by looking at it in a book.
And do you yourself, well, actually, I know the answer to this, so but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you yourself like to get out? I mean, you are very much an outdoors person. You are in your studio quite a lot, but I know you get on your bike quite often. Is that also a sort of regeneration of ideas, a refresh for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, it is. And wherever I go, I will always go to the botanic gardens that are there. And I've been to the botanic gardens in South Africa, in France, wherever I've gone, and Madrid, I will always go to the botanic gardens and see if I can find something there that just piques my interest and sends me off in another direction. So I tend to build in collections. So I've had a collection of cacti, I've had a collection of sea creatures, I've had a collection of dahlias, and at the moment I'm doing fungi. So I'll go off in a direction and put all my energy into looking around that subject until I feel ready to go off in another direction again.
Well, I mean, your work should have been in New York and Hong Kong, and it's here, but maybe when it goes out to Singapore, you can come and join us and have a visit of their botanic gardens, because they're extraordinary. They're out there. But for now, Frances, thank you. It's always lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time to
pleasure.
do your work. We'll speak very soon. Bye now.
Thanks, and Jenny. Bye-bye.